We go to the next topic. So I think if I remember, I have finished. So did you, Sangeeta, did you do today Hermitian operators? Hello? Hello? Is my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes, so we can see your screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So is the Hermitian operator done today?
No, sir.
So
No,
what was
sir.
done in teaching in first hour? I mean, some
Sir, ma'am took a tutorial, sir.
yeah tutorial on what?
She
Can
gave
solve
one
a problem.
No, problems on what topic? That's what I'm asking.
So actually, we had to find out the normalization constant and the
Okay.
expectation values and uncertainties.
Okay, fine. Not the Hermitian operator.
No.
No, sir.
Okay, fine. All right, so I think I was supposed to first tell you about the Hermitian operator theorem. So I will start from there. So let me just write down today's date. I think I uploaded the slides of the last class, right? Hello? Did you receive the slides of the last class? I shared in the VLAN.
No,
Hello?
sir.
No? The last class? No. On Thursday's class. Okay, if not, I will
Sir,
share.
the slides are not there, but the recording was uploaded on YouTube.
Yeah. So I will see. If I am not done, I will do that. So how many have I not shared any slides so far?
No, sir, not even the used slides last Tuesday.
Okay. So today I will try to share all the slides, okay, after this class. All right. So let me go to the Hermitian operator. I hope you remember the definition of the Hermitian operator. So if you have two functions,
Hello, sir.
yeah,
Sir, can I ask something from the last class?
yeah,
Sir, where you defined the integration, the definition of Hermitian matrices, there you took the conjugate. Then when the orders reversed, you wrote that the conjugate of A as adjoint of A, but should not be that transpose conjugate of A, the adjoint of A.
I'm writing it again. See, I have written the Hermitian operator definition. So I have taken the conjugate of this integration. This is a number, right? It's a definite integral over the entire volume element. So they have to be taken as conjugates of these in reverse order. So if you take reverse order, this psi 1 becomes star. As soon as it becomes star, it goes on the left. Then A becomes a dagger, but a dagger is equal to A, so I remove it.
So what I was saying that in the definition itself, you wrote that the conjugate of A as a dagger.
No. I
That's
wrote
what I was
definition. I
asking,
wrote A equal to a dagger.
Yeah, no. Where in the conversion step, where you took the conjugate of the whole thing from the first line. There.
Here.
Yeah. From the first line to the second line. Psi 1 star, the conjugate of psi 1, then you took the conjugate of A, right?
Right. But conjugate of A is called adjoint.
So it was transpose conjugate or something?
No. You are now thinking of matrix. These are operators.
Okay.
Operator conjugate is just adjoint.
Okay. Got it. Thank
you. You are always thinking in terms of matrices. That's the problem. I am not going into matrices yet. So if they are real number, they will become transposed. We will see that later. At this point, I have defined, imagine how I have defined the operator, conjugate operator. If A acts on phi, remember this, equal to psi. This is in Dirac notation I am writing. So A phi equal to psi, then phi star, a dagger, gives you psi star. So the conjugate of the operator acting on the complex conjugate from the other side gives you the conjugate of this function. So this is the conjugate operator, whichever way you want to say. That's your adjoint. So there is nothing called transpose operator. I have not defined anything called transpose operator.
Okay,
There is
I
no
got
meaning.
confused.
There is no meaning because the operator does not have a row or column. You understand?
Yeah, it is dimensionless, you said.
Yeah. So all right. So this is my definition of the Hermitian operator. And I will start from this to prove the theorem that they have real eigenvalues. So what is an operator eigenvalue equation? A acting on, let's say, phi I equal to lambda I phi I. Is it okay? Where A is an operator, this is the eigenfunction, this is the eigenvalues. We want to show that they are real. For a Hermitian A.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, for any Hermitian operator, does it have to be the fact that there actually exist eigenvalues? I mean, because there can be operators which have no eigenvalues, right?
That is possible. But we are assuming that they are real eigenvalues. Okay. That's possible.
Okay.
But those are so where there is no transformation, there is possible which can, yeah, we will discuss that. Those are very, really ill-defined operators.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So if I have a Hermitian operator, then I have to show that the eigenvalues, if they exist now, since you have raised this question, they are real, if they exist. Okay. So existence is assumed. Then I go back to the Hermitian operator definition.
Sir,
Remember,
is it true for all eigenfunctions or only some specific eigenfunctions?
all eigenvalues. So all eigenvalues.
No, sir, I am asking that for all that we are getting real eigenvalues for all eigenfunctions or some specific eigenfunctions, because last time we saw that when we were taking e to the power normal x,
No,
we
that
were
is different. These are all normalizable functions. Yeah, that's what we are talking about. That's right.
So all these functions have to be normalizable.
So
no?
which are normalizable. So all eigenvalues for those functions are real. In fact, those which are not normalizable, they're not really in the realm of the operator. Okay. All right. So let me now apply the Hermitian operator definition by making both this phi and psi as one of the eigenvalues. So let's say I take a phi I, this eigenvalue star A phi I star. Remember, I'm applying the general Hermitian operator definition. What is the definition? It will also become phi I star. This will remain A. Now this will become phi. Correct? So I have substituted for phi 1 and psi 1 one particular eigenfunction. So let's call it phi I. I mean, in fact, if you are confused with the use of phi here, I can call this psi 2 or something like that. Okay. I can change the name of phi 1 to psi 2 so that you don't get confused. This is an arbitrary function. But here, these phi 1s are specifically eigenfunctions of this operator. I can do that because those are arbitrary functions, so I can apply the operator for specific function. Now, A phi I is equal to lambda A phi I. So this side I write, right? So then left hand side becomes phi I star phi I, which is integral over phi I phi I. And again, writing in Dirac notation, I hope everybody understands, into lambda I, because A phi I equal to lambda A phi I. So this integral I have written in Dirac notation. So this integral is just integral phi I star phi I, lambda I. But there is a star here. So remember, there has to be a star here, there has to be a star here, right? Equal to, now again you have A phi I, that is lambda I, phi I star phi I. On the right hand side, right? I hope all of you agree with this. On the left hand side, there is a star, so I made it lambda star, I made this star. Now, if you look at this, what is the star of this? It is same as phi I star phi I. Because both sides, both are phi I. equal to lambda I star into lambda I star equal to lambda I phi I star. And now here is the normalization condition coming up. If they are normalizable, that means these values are finite. Correct? So for normalizable functions, I can cancel, which I cannot do if they're infinity. I hope you understand. If they're infinity, then I cannot cancel this. I hope all of you know this much mathematics. So I divide by finite quantity, which is this, and then I can get lambda I star equal to lambda I. Lambda I star equal to lambda. Is it clear? Which means,
Sir,
yes.
so just a small point, but in the above step, it should be phi star phi, and the entire bracket should be inside a star also, right?
Yes, that's why I made it. I made the star.
Okay, so you said it is the same as the without the star because we have normalized it to 1.
No, not 1. It can be 2, it can be 3, doesn't matter. They are all real
Okay.
numbers.
Okay.
You look at it another way. Don't even worry about it. You just take the conjugate of this integral. How will you do it? The reverse order. So this phi I will become phi I star. This phi I star will become phi I. So it is same.
Oh, okay, got it.
Forget about anything else. What is the value? Value is anyway real. That is what I'm trying to say. So the star is same. This is just a normalization thing. But the important thing is not 1 or 2 or 3. It has to be finite. That is what I mean by normalizable, not normalized. Again, I hope you remember the discussion. If it is finite, then I can cancel both sides. If it is unnormalized function, and that is what the discussion of e to the power x, somebody just now asked the question, then I can't prove the theorem. So for all normalizable eigenfunctions, I can show that the lambda I star equal to lambda I and the eigenvalues are real. Is it clear? The proof is actually trivial. So you go to this equation and simply put everything. So basically, I have written a Dirac notation. Those who are not comfortable, I can write the same thing in the integral. So, sorry, phi I star a phi I dx star equal to, this is Hermitian operator definition. Phi I star, a dagger is a, phi I star becomes phi I dx. Now these are eigenvalues, these are eigenfunctions. So I apply this, so it is lambda I. There is a conjugate, should become lambda I star integral phi I star phi I dx star. I'm putting the star right now, no problem. Equal to again lambda I integral phi I star phi I dx. Now what I want to say that this is same as this. Because if you take conjugate, it is phi I star phi I and finite. So this integral on the parenthesis is finite. And they're equal to this integral. So of course, I can cancel and saying that lambda I equal to lambda star. Is it okay? So I've done the same proof without Dirac notation, but Dirac notation is much more convenient. Is it okay? So it's a very simple proof to show that all eigenvalues are real. And this is a very important part which I'm going to use in postulate 3.
Sir, can you please go to the start of this proof?
Start of the proof.
Sir,
Yeah.
this one is sir.
So this is the general
no, sir.
Hermitian operator definition, where I have psi 2 and psi 1. So you interchange these two with conjugate coming here, a real thing going here, right? And A remaining A. That's the definition. Now for psi 1 and psi 2, I am using one of the eigenfunctions. Okay? So the same part I am now writing in the following manner. Both of them, psi 1 and psi 2, become phi I. So here also it is phi I, and I have written, this is the Hermitian operator definition. Is there any problem with this? This thing.
No,
Both
sir.
psi 1 and
Please
psi 2
repeat.
are phi I. Remember, that was arbitrary psi1 and psi2, right? So I can choose each of them to be one of the eigenfunctions. That is what I have done. Then I am using the eigenvalue equation. A phi I equal to lambda phi, lambda a phi. So lambda I goes out. So I have done this. Here there is a conjugate, so lambda I has a lambda a star. This conjugate phi I star phi I is same as phi I star phi I here, and they are finite, so they cancel. So lambda I becomes lambda star. Is there a problem?
No, sir. It's okay, sir.
Okay. All right. So with if there is no more questions on this postulate 2. So postulate 2 essentially says that for every dynamical observable there exists a Hermitian operator, and the operator can be constructed by writing the classical expression in terms of position and momentum. Don't forget that. And in coordinate representation, replace x by x, px by h crossed over I delta x. This is the operator form. And then the constructs, and this is the beauty of the postulates of quantum mechanics, this construct of px ensures that all operators thus constructed are Hermitian. So if you ask me why are all operators Hermitian, that is in the construct. That's the beauty of that postulate. So, but then what is the outcome of the Hermitian operators? The outcome is that the eigenvalues are real, which will then be used. So it's a beautifully constructed, the quantum mechanics. They knew how to construct this Hermitian. They knew why it is Hermitian. Wow. Why am I making it Hermitian? So that's, in summary, that's the postulate 2. Now I go to postulate 3, which is basically a measurement. And this is somewhat difficult postulate. So how do you measure an observable, value of an observable, that is important, on a system? Right? That's what you want to do. So I have a system of particles, as in physics. I want to make an observable, measurement of an observable. Let's say momentum, angular momentum, and so on. How do I do that? Remember, in postulate 1 and 2, I have been able to tell you what is a system, how do I define a system, how do I define an observable. These two things I have told you. Now the answer is, how can I put them together? Not the answer. The question is, how can I put them together to make a measurement of an observable? That's the question we are asking. Is it clear? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sometimes I'm not sure because I'm on the screen whether there is any connection problem or not. So when I'm asking, please somebody answer so that I know that I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. So let's say I have a system psi, a system which is defined by psi, and an observable which is defined by A. Remember, of course, this is a Hermitian operator. These are the two things I know. What do I now do? So the postulate first says that all measurements of an observable A, observable is A, right? Of an observable A on any arbitrary psi, which means on any arbitrary state. Okay, I hope you read it properly. On any arbitrary states, always lead to one of the eigenvalues. This is a very difficult statement. Please try to understand the statement first. All one of the eigenvalues of A. So let me put this hat. Yes. So operator A has many eigenvalues. As I told you, phi I equal to lambda I phi I. So I have lambda 1. This is a quantum number. So I equal to 1, 2, 3, etc. Lambda 2, lambda 3, lambda 4, and so on. What I'm saying is that given a psi, now what is that psi? I don't know. It's an arbitrary psi. Don't forget it. All that I will get is one of those lambdas. Now, this is a very, very difficult statement to understand, because you may immediately tell me, but this psi is not phi's. Psi is neither phi 1, nor phi 2, nor phi 3, nor phi 4. But I am saying I will always get either lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda 3, lambda 4. Let's restrict ourselves for the time being to only 4 functions. I hope you understand. This is, you can easily generalize. Let's say I have only 4 eigenvalues. I am saying that I will only get lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda 3. But can I predict? The answer is no. Just like that probabilistic interpretation, I am saying that in general, we can't predict which one. Which eigenvalue? So let's say I do a thought experiment, the same thought experiment that I talked of. There are several states and there are several robots who are measuring the operator rate. R1, R2, all are measuring operator rate, right? And so on. These are robot 3, robot 4, they are all measuring. Each of them will get some lambda. But the problem is, even though they are identical states, so these are identical states. This is again a thought experiment. And this is where Einstein had a lot of problem. Maybe this guy will get lambda 2. This person will get lambda 3. This person may get lambda 1. This person again may get lambda 3. The next person may get lambda 4. And so on. So apparently it looks like some random values, yes. What the postulate says that, however, whatever random it is, they are going to be one of the eigenvalues. What the postulate further says, that given the psi and A, which is of course given to you, we can predict, and this is most important, and this is where Einstein and Schrodinger are very, very particular about it. They said, yes, it may be random, but we can predict the probability with which lambda i's are obtained. So I can't tell who will get where, what. But if there are thousands and 10,000s of observations on the same system, I can tell what is the probability of getting lambda 1, what is the probability of getting lambda 2, what is the probability of getting lambda 3, and so on. I hope you can understand my question.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, so to try, I mean, to see if I have understood, like, is it something like if the if our operator is, let's say, for the sake of argument, velocity, and eigenvalues come out to be
Velocity is bad operator. Let's say
momentum, and if my eigenvalues come out to be 5, 10, and 15 only for this case, so you're saying that however many times however many identical systems we have, each time we measure, we will only get 5, 10, or 15. Is
Right.
that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
Unless you make a repeated measurement. If that is the first measurement, that is important. The repeated measurement, there is something else, which is even more difficult. Dirac actually had a hypothesis on that. I mean, I will not go into that right now. If it is the first measurement, you'll always get 5, 10, 15. Identical system. But importantly, I can predict the probability with which this will be obtained. How? That I will see. But I'm just telling you. So when Einstein had a question that it is totally random, I can't even accept such a theory. They said, no, it is not totally random. We can predict quantitatively what is the probability. But I can't predict who will get what. That means which subject will get what value I can predict. And that really started a very big discussion in quantum mechanics, which is called subject-object relations. That means your value depends on who is observing what. But the same person will observe, he may get something else. So what is exactly happening? We'll come to that. For the repeated measurement, this is very important. In fact, this discussion actually goes, this is what I wanted to do in the evening class. This actually goes into the realm of metaphysics. There is a subject-object relationship which I can't define, which is uncertain. But let's keep this postponed of the metaphysical question. The point that we want to understand now, how do you get this probability? Okay. Now to answer this, there is another theorem of Hermitian operator which I did not state. I will not prove that theorem. I will merely state this theorem. That is, all the eigenfunctions of a Hermitian operator are or constitute or can be made to be a set of orthonormal functions. I hope all of you know what is orthonormal, right? Have you read orthonormal functions? Which means integral phi I star x, phi j of x, just the scalar product between the two functions is nothing but the Kronecker delta ij. If I do full integration again, everything is full integration. That means if I is equal to j, it is 1. If I is not equal to j, it is 0. Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, so we studied about
I
orthonormal
have studied.
function.
So I have said the real eigenvalues. Now I'm talking about the eigenfunction. They can be made to be a set of orthonormal functions without any loss of generality. I'm not going to prove this theorem. Maybe at some time in the teaching, in a tutorial class, I'll try to prove it. But that's really a theorem too. I said that there is one theorem more I will have to teach, but that's this actually. But let's assume this. With this, we can now try to predict the probability. And this is a very interesting part. But before I do that, let me also say that hence the postulate 3 stated that in general, the measurement yields different values. Okay. And what we can predict is an average value. As a result of the measurement. So when such a measurement is going on, what do I say? What is the value? So you already have so many values with some probability. So I can take an arithmetic average as my average value. So this is how to calculate. Once I know the probability, I can calculate the average value. So don't worry about it. I will do that. That brings me to the postulate 4 on how to calculate the average. This is really not a postulate. In a way, this is an interpretation. Many people don't like to call it postulate, but it's okay. The following is a very important part to understand. Given an arbitrary function, given those eigenfunctions, I can write this psi, the initial state of the system, as a linear combination of these eigenfunctions. Note, I should also say this here, a very important part, a set of complete orthonormal functions. All eigenfunctions together form a complete set. Okay? A complete set of orthonormal functions. So if that is so, then I will be able to expand my psi as a linear combination of the eigenfunctions, which are now orthonormal. Remember. So these are my orthonormal functions. These are the coefficients. Now, what this postulate said is that if I know these coefficients, then mod Ci square, these are over each of the eigenfunction. What is mod Ci square? It is Ci star Ci. And this is a real number. Again, real positive number. Mod Ci square gives you the probability of obtaining the corresponding eigenvalue, obtaining lambda I. Please try to understand. This is a very important postulate. It actually relates you how to get the problem. Now remember, this is also kind of postulate. So you don't have to ask questions. But now you'll see it is all self-consistent. If I expand psi in terms of the eigenfunctions, then there will be a coefficient. This expansion can be done mathematically. Given psi, given the set of phi I can do it. How do I get phi I? Because I know A. Once I know A, I can solve the eigenvalue equation. This can be solved. That is a mathematics. Don't have to bother about it. How to solve it? I know all the phi i's which are orthonormal, complete orthonormal set. So I know phi i's, I know psi. Mathematically, I can construct Ci. I will show you how to do that little bit later, but don't worry. So what I'm now saying is that the postulate says this is my probability of obtaining lambda. So I actually paraphrase my probability 3, my postulate 3, postulate 3 by this postulate that I can also calculate the probability, and hence I can calculate the average value very easily. What is the average value now? Average value will be the probability of getting each of the lambda. Remember, the lambda i's are obtained with some probability, and the probability is mod Ci square. So this is the average value of the measurement A. I hope it is clear to all of you, this part. Please ask question. I am getting only lambdas, and I am telling this is the average. So this is basically the arithmetic probability.
Sir, average value of A, I mean, you mean to say the dynamical observable corresponding to A, the average value of that will be this
right.
sum.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's right. There is a symbol
Sir,
for the average. Yes, there is a symbol for the average value in Dirac notation, which is simply written as this. So this is sum over I mod Ci square lambda. Yes, question, please.
Sir, I just had one question that for some, I mean, for one-dimensional problems, I can see why only, I mean, having the lambda i's would suffice because we would only have some scalar as the result of our measurement. But sir, for vectors and things like that, which we also sometimes say, right? I mean, in three-dimensional system, momentum is a vector and things like that.
Yes.
In that way, how do the scalars lambda I suffice to characterize those kinds of objects also?
Lambda i's are always scalar.
Yes, sir. But I mean, we can
Lambda
measure
is
a
always
vector.
Psi is a
to-
vector. Psi is a vector. Please understand this. This can be a vector in 3D space. This is 3-dimensional. Operator is defined in 3, but this is always a number.
Okay, sir. No, I was just asking that if we wanted to measure the vector momentum, I mean the px, py, pz, this vector.
Yes.
So in that case, I
So
just
I have
wanted to
different
ask.
operators. I have different operators for
Oh,
PS,
okay.
PI, PZ.
Okay, in that way.
So each operator will have a different eigenvalues.
Okay, now I understood.
That's not a problem. We'll see. We'll come to that. Like angular momentum, for example. So I can have an average L, which is an average of Lx, Ly, Lz. Okay. And each of them has a different operator, different set of eigenvalues.
Got it, sir.
Yeah. So that it all can be done. That's not a problem. So what I'm saying, that philosophically you understand, this is the probability with which I get lambda I. So this is simply arithmetic probability. Like you have a physics marks, chemistry marks, maths marks, and you have a probability weightage. This is basically weightage of lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda 3, lambda 4. You understand? So for example, let me give an example now. So let's say these are my Gedanke experiment, and I just take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I have 3 eigenvalues. So one of them, when I measure on this state, I get lambda 1, another I get lambda 2, this I get lambda 3, this I get lambda 4, just for the, and randomly I'm saying this I get lambda 2, this I get lambda 2, this I get lambda 1, this I get lambda 4. Now 8 is of course not a number that you can do probability. If you really want to do, it has to be infinite set of numbers. So to calculate probability, everybody will get determined, but to calculate probability, you must have actual experiment. If you want to do, it's quite difficult. But there is a probability which you can compute without experiment. That's the point that I'm trying to now come in the postulate 4. Because if I know this, I don't have to do this experiment. You understand? To calculate probability, I can directly calculate analytically. But I'm just trying to relate to you. If I have 8 as the number of experiment, and this is not the right way to do, but then I can say probability of lambda 1 is how many times lambda 1 is there? 2 out of 8. Here. Probability of getting lambda 2 is 3 out of 8. Probability of getting lambda 3 is 1 out of 8. Probability of getting lambda 4 is also 2 out of 8. Right? I mean, a simple experiment. Then what would be the average value? Average value will be 1 by 4. That's 2 by 8 is nothing but 1 by 4. This is also 1 by 4. So 1 by 4 into lambda 1 plus 3 by 8 into lambda 2 plus 1 by 8 into lambda 3 plus 1 by 4 into lambda 4. Is it clear? So this is the average value. Is it
Sir,
clear?
I just had a question in general on not quantum mechanics part of it necessarily, but just probability in general. That, sir, I mean, you said we have to make infinite identical systems and measure each one of them using
Yeah.
robots or whatever kind of thing. But sir, my question is, in real life, obviously we cannot have infinitely many
obviously.
systems. So
Obviously.
do we have a way of calculating by saying that, okay, if we do 100 experiments, then our error will be within this
that we can,
bound?
but that is a statistics. What you are going
Okay.
is a statistical question. We can do that. But at this point, what I'm telling, quantum mechanics does not need it.
Okay.
That is what I'm trying to say. I will be able to calculate CI without doing this experiment.
Okay, without perform. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to relate to you the experiment. I will now show you how to calculate CI. And that is, then I'm done with. Okay, so this is the main part of the postulate. And I will close with that I write psi as sum over I, Ci phi I, right? I know phi I. Remember, I know phi I, I know psi. Initial state is known to me by the first postulate of quantum mechanics. And because the operator A is known, I know all the phi i's. Now I want to calculate Ci. So how do I calculate Ci? Let's say I calculate Ck, kth coefficient of this function. So I will say that the Ck is integral phi k star. Let me first write it. X, again one dimensional writing, psi x dx. Which is in Dirac notation, those who are comfortable, it is phi k psi. This is my proposition. Now I will prove this.
Excuse me,
Let's-
sir. So
yeah.
is this something analogous to a Fourier series or something like that? where we
It's same. It's just mathematics. So let me go to the right hand side. Right hand side is integral phi k star x psi x dx. And now I expand psi as a linear combination of this, right? So I will have sum over I, Ci will come out. Sorry, sum over I, Ci, integral, Ci will come out of the integration, phi k star x, phi I x dx. Do you agree? I've expanded this as Ci phi I x. Ci is a number, it comes out, but the sum remains. Do you agree with this from here to here? Please tell if you have any
Yes,
problem.
yes.
I have expanded psi x as Ci phi I and integrated over phi phi k phi I. Ci is not a part of the integration because it's a number. Then I'm saying this is set of orthonormal eigenfunctions, right? So this is sum over I, Ci, this can be written as delta Ki. Kronecker delta. Which means when you are summing over I, if I is not equal to K, it is 0. So only when I equal to K, it survives. Only when I equal to K, it survives. So the result at that point is Ck. Agreed? That is what I proved. I've started from right hand side and I've said this value must just be controlled by this K, phi K. This is very critical. Because when I expand, everything will cancel. 0 because of orthonormality. Only that coefficient will survive. So this result is just Ck. Is it clear? So what they said is very easy. I just take each of the phi k, integrate to psi x. I will get Ck. So term by term, I can get all the Ci's. So this is mathematics, right? The postulate is the following, that if I write this as sum over a Ci square, this is the postulate, that this is the probability. That I assume. After that, rest is mathematics. Rest is simple mathematics, that from here I can get. This is no longer a postulate. This is not a postulate. The postulate is that the probability is mod Ck square. So in some way, I can write this in Dirac notation as just phi k psi. Again, I'm writing Dirac notation because it's very, very convenient and you get slowly used to it. I don't write these coordinates. The integration is assumed. I will stop here today. So I have told you, given a psi, given the set of phi i's, I can calculate the coefficient. And now that I know this is the probability of getting a lambda I can also calculate the average value. Done. I will show you that there is a simpler way to calculate the same average value. The same average value, instead of doing summation over each eigenvalue, I can actually forget about the eigenvalues and the eigenfunction. I can directly calculate with psi. So I will say that this average value that I wrote as sum over mod Ci squared lambda I can be written in terms of only psi and A, which is beautiful. I don't have to break down A. Here I have broken down A. What are the eigenvalues, and then use the probability and written it. But having come to this stage, it is only a mathematics to show me how to write it. So I will write that. And close the postulate 4. I will have one more postulate that will be of the stationary states. That will be very interesting when psi will be one of the eigenfunction itself. So that is, right now psi is an arbitrary state. But it may so happen that psi is an eigenfunction of that operator. Then what happens? Then a lot of things become simplified. I already talked to you. The Schrodinger equation H psi equal to E psi is an example of that. And that will be my postulate 5, after which I have one more postulate, which is time-dependent Schrodinger equation. Time-dependent Schrodinger equation. And then Ehrenfest theorem, and I will close. I will hand over to Professor Sen for application of particle in a box and so on. Okay? So I will probably take up to the next Tuesday. I mean, the pace at which I go, I will probably take 3 hours, but maybe 2.5 hours. I will see. So that will be Thursday. Next Thursday will be the right time to take the quiz. Okay? Can I come out of this screen? If there are no more questions, yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So we will see on Thursday at 5 o'clock. I will revise. This postulate 3 and 4 are a little bit difficult, so please read this. This is the heart of quantum mechanics. In some way, that is where Einstein had difficulty. There was a very nice example of Schrodinger's cat. I will explain that. Very simple thing. So I will do a little bit dwell more with the postulate 3 and 4 before I go to the next postulate. And I will also show How do you calculate the average value? Bypassing lambdas, bypassing the evaluation of the eigenvalues. You can directly use by psi and A. Okay? Thank you very much. I'll see you on Thursday. All right? I'm closing the class now. Yes, Snehadi. Hello, are you there? Hello? Yeah, so can you have a separate meeting with me?
Sorry, sir.
Can you have a separate meeting with me on the content? Because you wrote it's difficult for you.
No. You have told na that postulate 3 and 4 are difficult, so that is why I wrote.
Oh, okay. Very difficult. No. If you, but I'm again telling you, if any of you find difficulty at this part, because this even Einstein had difficulty. Don't worry. So please ask me for a separate class. Only for those I can take a Google Meet on evening or Sunday or a Saturday.
Yes, I am
Those
looking for the that philosophical class you have told.
No, that I will anyway do. But
Okay.
other than that, the content part.
Okay, sir.
If
Thank
any
you.
of you have difficulty, please tell me. Okay, in a small group, you just let me know. If you can gather a few people together, it will be easier. Okay.
Yeah.
So please write it in your group. I can explain the postulates in a little bit more relaxed when things are done. So basically, that will be like a tutorial class, but explaining it. Okay. So any of you finding difficult, you are free to contact me. I am busy, but I always give time to the students, and I will definitely give on the weekend in that case. So we have to be only little bit flexible with time. Okay, so
Yes,
that
sir.
I can
Thanks a lot, sir.
give you a separate course.
Yes, thanks a lot, sir.
Yeah, because that will really help all of you, because this is the first time we are learning quantum mechanics. So indeed, it is not easy. And I
Yes.
always quote Albert Einstein: if he didn't understand, it is not easy, right? Because
Yes.
this is very counterproductive, counterintuitive, but very beautiful actually. There is a poetry, the way Schrodinger and Heisenberg put it. You just have to accept the postulate, and the postulates have also some. They are not just like a mad people writing something. There's a beautiful method in that madness.
Okay,
See
sir.
that mod CI square probability now beautifully it will connect. We'll see. All right. So
Yeah.
we'll see on Thursday. Okay. So that's an offer that I'm giving. Any of you have, please connect. Okay. Bye. Bye.